The morning light slanted through the tall windows of the Marcellus household, bathing the dining hall in golden warmth. It was the kind of light that seemed to bless everything it touched, except Seraphina. While Lysandra and Talia, her sisters, sat draped in silken gowns, laughing at some witty story, Seraphina stood in the background, clutching a silver tray. She had been awake long before dawn, scrubbing, polishing, preparing the breakfast that now adorned the long mahogany table. The smell of roasted coffee beans, buttered croissants, and fresh fruit filled the room. Yet, as she placed a bowl of berries before her sisters, no one looked at her. No one ever did. "Mother, did you see the gown I've chosen for the gala?" Lysandra twirled in her chair, her golden curls bouncing. Ilara, their mother, beamed at her eldest. "My darling, you'll steal every eye in the room. You always do." Her voice dripped with adoration, rich and syrupy. "And I'll be by her side, of course," Talia chimed, pouting playfully. "Though I suppose I'll just have to accept being second best." Ilara laughed, reaching across the table to stroke her cheek. "You, my Talia, could never be second. You were born to dazzle." Seraphina's hands trembled on the tray, though she forced her expression into stillness. She wanted so desperately for even a fragment of that smile, 1 ounce of that affection. Instead, when Ilara's gaze finally did flicker toward her, it wasn't warmth that filled her eyes, it was venom. "Don't just stand there, Seraphina. Clear the plates. Must I tell you everything?" The words weren't sharp in volume, but sharp in edge. And the look Ilara gave her, dark, unforgiving, was not that of a mother annoyed with a clumsy child. It was something deeper, almost primal, as though Seraphina's very existence was an offense. "Yes, mother," Seraphina whispered. Her voice was barely audible, but it didn't matter. No one was listening. But inside, her heart bled. Why? Why did her mother's eyes hold hatred that seemed carved from stone, too deep to be explained by mere disappointment? Why did she always feel less like a daughter and more like a shadow? And as she carried the dishes away, Seraphina knew this was no ordinary dislike. Something darker lurked beneath her mother's disdain. That night, Orion stood in the study, staring into the flames of the fireplace. His hands were braced on the mantel, knuckles white. He had been patient. For years he had endured Ilara's treatment of Seraphina, telling himself it would change. But tonight, he could no longer bite his tongue. "Ilara," he said, his voice heavy with restrained fury, "I won't stay silent any longer." Ilara, poised elegantly in an armchair, sipped from a crystal glass of wine. Her dark hair shimmered in the firelight, her beauty as undeniable as it was intimidating. "Oh," she replied coolly. "What noble cause stirs you this time, Orion?" "Our daughter," Orion snapped. "Seraphina. The way you treat her." "Don't," Ilara cut in, her eyes narrowing. "Don't speak that name to me as though she deserves your pity." Orion turned toward her, anguish etched across his face. "She's a child, Ilara. Your child. She looks at you like you hang the stars, and all you give her is coldness. Do you know how it breaks her?" For the first time, Ilara's mask slipped. A flicker, pain, rage, passed across her features. She slammed the glass down on the table, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "You think I don't know what it does to her?" she hissed. "You think I don't feel the weight of her presence every single day?" Orion froze. "What are you saying?" Ilara's lips curled into a bitter smile. "Some wounds never heal, Orion. And some mistakes live right under your roof." Orion's breath caught. He wanted to press her, demand answers. But Ilara rose, sweeping past him with the grace of a queen, leaving only the faint scent of her perfume and the sting of her words. Orion stood there, defeated, the firelight flickering across his broken expression. The attic was her refuge. While the rest of the house glowed with chandeliers and laughter, Seraphina crept into the dusty loft, where forgotten boxes and old books lay abandoned. She lit a single candle, the flame trembling like her own fragile hope. And then, she opened the worn medical textbook she had hidden beneath a loose floorboard. The words, though dense and complex, were freedom. They spoke of anatomy, healing, possibility. With every page she devoured, Seraphina built a world in her mind where she mattered, where she could use her hands not for scrubbing floors but for saving lives. "Knowledge," she whispered to herself, tracing a finger over the diagram of a human heart, is the only key they can't take from me. The nights bled into mornings. When the house slept, Seraphina read. When others dreamed of gowns and dances, she dreamed of scalpels and sutures, of white coats and respect. Each late-night study session was a rebellion, silent but powerful. One evening, as rain pattered on the roof, she stumbled upon a glossy brochure tucked between the pages of an old atlas. She picked it up, curiosity sparking. Kingston Medical School. Full scholarship opportunities. Her heart stuttered. Her eyes scanned the words again and again, barely believing. It was as though fate itself had dropped into her lap. Could she dare? Could she escape? Downstairs, her mother's laughter rang out. It cut into Seraphina's fragile dream like a knife, but she clutched the brochure tighter, her whisper fierce. One day, I'll be free. The morning the letter arrived, Seraphina almost didn't open it. Her hands shook as she broke the seal, her breath caught in her throat. And then, "Congratulations! You have been awarded a full scholarship to Kingston Medical School." Her knees gave out, and she collapsed onto her bed, laughter and sobs mingling in a wild release. She had done it. She had been chosen. For the first time in her life, Seraphina dared to imagine herself stepping into a world where she was seen. She rushed downstairs, the letter clutched against her chest. Ilara was arranging flowers in the parlor. For one mad moment, Seraphina believed, hoped, that maybe, just maybe, her mother would smile. "Mother," she breathed. "I was accepted. A full scholarship. To Kingston." Ilara's hands stilled on the vase. Slowly, she turned, her expression unreadable. "Is that so?" "Yes." Seraphina's eyes glistened. I thought you might be proud." A pause. Then, Ilara's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something colder. "How convenient. One less burden cluttering this house." The words fell like shards of glass. Seraphina's joy withered, though she forced a trembling smile. "I'll start packing." Later, as she folded her clothes into a small suitcase, she overheard her mother's voice through the half-open door of the study. "Yes," Ilara murmured into the phone. "She's leaving. Good riddance. One less reminder." Seraphina's blood ran cold. Reminder of what? She pressed her hand against her chest, the scholarship letter crumpled beneath her palm. The joy of freedom was now laced with fear. 7 years passed. The Seraphina who returned was no longer the shadow girl of Ilara's house. She stood tall in her white coat, her stethoscope draped like armor, her gaze confident. She was Dr. Seraphina Marcellus now, respected, admired, free. Her tiny apartment brimmed with books, certificates, and framed photos of her with patients whose lives she had saved. She spoke with passion at conferences, her words carrying weight. But the sweetest moments were the weekly phone calls with her father. "My star," Orion's warm voice filled the line. "You've made me so proud. I couldn't have done it without you, Father." Those calls were her lifeline. With Ilara and her sisters, contact dwindled to polite, empty messages. Birthdays acknowledged, holidays skimmed over. She told herself she didn't care. Until Caleb. He appeared like something out of the very books she had once buried herself in, charming, steady, his eyes holding hers with unshakable tenderness. They met in the hospital corridors, their hands brushing as they exchanged charts, their laughter echoing in the cafeteria. "You work too hard, Dr. Marcellus," Caleb teased one evening as they walked out together. "And you don't work hard enough, Dr. Turner," she shot back, though her lips curved. He smiled, soft and certain. "Then perhaps we balance each other out." Seraphina's heart, once armored in layers of hurt, began to thaw. For the first time, she let herself believe in something as fragile and as dangerous as love. Yet, as she leaned into Caleb's embrace one night beneath the city's glowing lights, an unease flickered deep inside her. Her past was not finished. Ilara's shadow still lingered. And Seraphina knew, though she didn't want to admit it, that the story of her twisted fate was only just beginning. The restaurant's candlelight flickered against Caleb's face, softening the edges of his sharp jawline. He looked nervous, his usual calm replaced with restless energy. Seraphina tilted her head, curious. "Caleb," she teased, "you've been stirring that wine for 5 minutes. Are you planning to drink it or hypnotize me with it?" He chuckled, but his eyes were serious. Slowly, he slid a small velvet box across the table. Seraphina's heart stopped. "Seraphina Marcellus," Caleb said, his voice thick with emotion. "I have watched you fight for your place in this world. I've seen your heart, brave, stubborn, beautiful. And I want to spend every day proving I'm worthy of it. Will you marry me?" Her breath caught. The dining room seemed to fade, leaving only his trembling hand, the glittering ring, and her own pounding heartbeat. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, surer, "Yes, Caleb." The room erupted in polite applause, but Seraphina barely heard it. Caleb slipped the ring onto her finger, and for the first time in her life, she felt chosen. Yet beneath the joy was a knot of dread. One hurdle loomed ahead, her mother. That weekend, Caleb insisted on meeting Elara. Seraphina agreed, though fear pooled in her stomach. When they arrived, Elara stood at the door, regal in a deep crimson dress. Her eyes skimmed over Caleb, and for a fleeting second, something strange flickered there, an intensity Seraphina couldn't place. "Mother," Seraphina said cautiously, "this is Caleb, the man I'm going to marry." Elara smiled. "Too wide. Too sharp. So this is the one." The evening unfolded under Elara's piercing gaze. Her compliments toward Caleb were too effusive, her questions too probing. And when Seraphina glanced up, she caught it, the glint in her mother's eyes. Not approval. Not joy. Something darker. Something that made Seraphina's skin crawl. 3 days later, Seraphina's phone rang. Caleb's voice on the other end was low, shaky. "Seraphina," he began. I can't marry you." She froze. "What are you saying?" "I don't know how to explain it," Caleb stammered. "After visiting your family, things feel different. Wrong. He broke off, the silence heavier than any words. Her chest tightened. "Caleb, please. Talk to me." "Did my mother—" "I'm sorry," he interrupted. His voice cracked. "It's over." The line went dead. Seraphina sat on the edge of her bed, her engagement ring burning against her finger. She felt the world collapse around her, rage and despair intertwining. She knew, Elara was behind this. Later that evening, as she pulled Caleb's old jacket tighter around her for comfort, something metallic jingled in the pocket. She reached inside and pulled out a small charm bracelet. Her breath hitched. It was identical to the one Elara always wore. The blood drained from her face. It happened again. And again. 2 more men courted her in the months that followed. Kind, intelligent, genuine. But each time, the moment they met Elara, something changed. They became distant, evasive, and then gone. The pattern was unmistakable. One evening, Seraphina sat across from her reflection, her fists clenched in her lap. "Why, Mother?" she whispered to the mirror. "Why won't you let me be happy?" She remembered the venom in Elara's eyes, the way she smiled too warmly at Caleb, the way each suitor vanished without explanation. This wasn't coincidence. It was sabotage. Deliberate. The loneliness grew unbearable, a hollow ache in her chest. So when Marcus, a colleague, steady and devoted, confessed his feelings, Seraphina's defenses crumbled. "I know you don't see me the way I see you," Marcus said quietly one late night in the hospital cafeteria. "But I'd wait a lifetime if it meant being by your side." Tears welled in Seraphina's eyes. No man had ever spoken with such certainty, such unconditional love. "Then let's not wait," she whispered impulsively. "Marry me." Marcus blinked. "Are you serious?" She nodded, her voice trembling. "We don't have to tell anyone." "Not yet." Not her. It was madness, but in that moment, it felt like freedom. The chapel was small, hidden in a quiet part of town. The air smelled faintly of lilies and candle wax. Seraphina wore a simple white dress, nothing like the extravagant gowns her sisters had flaunted. But as she stood before Marcus, hand in hand, she felt more radiant than ever. "I take you, Marcus Hale," she whispered, "to be my husband." His grip tightened, his eyes shining. "And I take you, Seraphina Marcellus, to be my wife. To honor you, protect you, and love you until my last breath." The words wrapped around her like armor. For once, she wasn't Alara's unwanted child, nor the girl whose suitors vanished. She was Seraphina, loved, chosen, seen. When the vows ended, Marcus kissed her softly. Their secret union was fragile, but it was theirs. Yet as they walked out into the sunlight, her phone rang. It was Lysandra. Her voice was frantic. "Seraphina, come quickly. It's father. He's very ill. Very ill." Seraphina's heart lurched. The joy of the moment shattered, replaced with dread. The house smelled of antiseptic and despair. Orion lay pale and frail on the bed, his once strong frame withered. His eyes fluttered open as Seraphina rushed to his side. "Father," she whispered, clutching his hand. "Seraphina," he rasped, his voice a fragile thread. "I heard about Marcus. The secret marriage." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't mean to hide it from you. I just—" He squeezed her hand weakly. "No anger, child. Only love. Only sorrow that I won't see your happiness bloom." "Don't say that," she begged. "Please don't." Orion's gaze flickered, filled with regret. "I tried to protect you from her demons. But I failed." Her breath caught. "Her demons." He coughed, every word a battle. "Ilara, she carries darkness. Be careful, Seraphina. Promise me." "I promise," she sobbed, pressing her forehead against his hand. Moments later, his chest stilled. His last breath left him, leaving silence heavier than stone. As the coffin was lowered days later, Seraphina felt her world crumble. And then, across the graveyard, she caught it, Ilara's glance. Fleeting, sharp. Not grief. Not sorrow. Triumph. The house was quieter without Orion. Too quiet. His laughter, his gentle hums of old folk songs, his deep voice calling Seraphina, my star, all gone. What remained was a hollow echo, filled with unspoken resentments and grief. On the evening after the funeral, the family gathered in the parlor. Seraphina sat stiffly across from Ilara, the fire crackling between them. Lysandra and Talia hovered near, their usual brightness dimmed by sorrow. Ilara's gaze swept the room, sharp as ever. "Your father's wishes were clear," she said finally. "We remain a family. We hold together." Seraphina's lips parted, disbelief flashing across her face. Now she speaks of family. After years of cruelty. But Lysandra, red-eyed, nodded eagerly. "Yes, Mama. We can't fall apart." Talia clasped Seraphina's hand suddenly, her grip trembling. "Please, Seraphina. Let's try." The touch was unexpected, softening Seraphina's defenses. She glanced at Ilara. For once, her mother's eyes weren't filled with hatred, they were unreadable, clouded, perhaps even weary. A fragile truce was born that night, unspoken yet binding. Seraphina told herself it was what Orion would have wanted. Weeks passed. She returned to her hospital shifts, threw herself into her patients. But something changed, something within her. The nausea, the fatigue, the strange fluttering in her chest. One morning, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, Seraphina clutched a small white stick in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines. Her knees buckled. "A baby," she whispered. Tears streamed down her face, joy and fear colliding. She pressed her palm to her stomach, a fierce smile breaking through. "Father, you'll live on through this child." But the question lingered, dark and heavy. Would Ilara see the baby as hope, or as another weapon? 9 months blurred into a haze of exhaustion, anticipation, and quiet joy. Marcus was her rock, fetching midnight snacks, massaging swollen feet, whispering promises that he would always be by her side. The day came with thunder rattling the windows. Hours of labor left Seraphina drenched in sweat, clutching Marcus's hand until his knuckles turned white. Then, a cry. Small, fragile, piercing. Seraphina collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming as the nurse placed the bundle in her arms. A boy. Their son. His tiny fist curled around her finger, and her heart expanded until it felt too big for her chest. "Hello, my love," she whispered. "You're my miracle." Marcus leaned close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Our miracle." Days later, against Marcus's protests, Seraphina extended an invitation. She deserves a chance, she argued. Maybe a grandchild will soften her heart. Ilara arrived dressed impeccably, pearls at her throat, her perfume filling the nursery. She leaned over the crib, her face illuminated by soft lamplight. "How precious," she murmured. Her tone was smooth, but her eyes lingered too long on Marcus, trailing over him in a way that made Seraphina's skin crawl. When Ilara lifted her gaze, it locked onto Marcus's, a strange intensity in her smile. Seraphina shivered, hugging the baby closer. Something was off. Something was very, very wrong. That night, Marcus whispered to her, "I don't like the way she looks at us." "At me?" Seraphina closed her eyes, dread gnawing at her. "Neither do I." At first, Marcus tried to dismiss it. He told himself grief had unhinged Ilara, that she was simply clinging to family in strange ways. But as days turned into weeks, her behavior became impossible to ignore. She touched his arm too often, her fingers lingering. Her compliments were laced with double meanings. "You're so strong, Marcus. A man like you deserves more than just duty." He recoiled inwardly each time, forcing polite smiles for Seraphina's sake. But one night, the mask cracked. They were in the kitchen, the baby finally asleep. Ilara accidentally brushed against Marcus, her hand pressing against his chest. Marcus froze. "Mrs. Marcellus." "Call me Ilara," she purred, her eyes glinting. "We're family, after all." Marcus stepped back, his stomach churning. "You need to stop." Her smile turned cold, predator-like. "Careful, Marcus. Seraphina is fragile. She wouldn't survive betrayal." The unspoken threat made his blood run cold. That night, he told Seraphina everything. She stared at him, horrified, then furious. No. She wouldn't. She couldn't. But Marcus's instincts screamed otherwise. He had seen too much, felt the malice beneath her touches. "I'm not waiting for proof," he said grimly. "I'll find it." The next morning, when Seraphina left for her shift, Marcus stayed home. Quietly, carefully, he installed small cameras throughout the house. Tiny eyes hidden in corners, behind books, in the nursery. "I'll protect us," he whispered, his jaw tight. "No matter what it takes." It was a rainy evening when Marcus finally sat down to review the footage. The house was silent, Seraphina asleep upstairs with the baby. Marcus scrolled through hours of mundane recordings, Ilara folding laundry, stirring soup, humming lullabies in the nursery. Then he saw it. The camera in the kitchen flickered to life. Ilara stood at the counter, her back to the lens. She held a small vial, tilting it carefully over a bowl of pureed carrots meant for the baby. Marcus's blood froze. She stirred the mixture with deliberate precision, then carried the bowl into the nursery, her expression calm, almost serene. Marcus's hands shook as he skipped to another angle. The nursery camera captured her cooing softly to the baby, spoon in hand, as she lifted the tainted food toward his tiny mouth. Only Seraphina's sudden entrance stopped her. "Mother, I'll feed him," she said cheerfully, unaware of the poison-laced spoon. Ilara's smile never faltered as she set it down. Marcus sat frozen, bile rising in his throat. But then, the footage revealed more. Later that night, when the house was quiet, Ilara returned to the kitchen. She retrieved the vial from her purse, holding it up to the dim light. The camera zoomed in just enough to catch the label. Marcus's eyes widened. It wasn't just poison. It was a controlled sedative, strong enough to stop an infant's breathing. His stomach lurched. Dear God! The next morning, Marcus played the footage for Seraphina. She sat beside him on the couch, their baby cradled against her chest. At first, she frowned in confusion. Then horror spread across her face as she watched her mother tip the vial into the food. Her scream tore through the house. She clutched her son tighter, rocking back and forth as if to shield him from the images on the screen. No. No, she wouldn't. She couldn't. Marcus pulled her close, his own heart breaking. I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't want to believe it either. But it's real. Seraphina's world shattered. The woman who had birthed her, despised her, belittled her, was now revealed as someone who wanted to kill her child. Why? She sobbed. Why would she do this to us? Marcus held her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. Because she's sick. Because she hates what she can't control. But listen to me, we're not powerless anymore. We have proof. Seraphina stared at the paused frame of Ilara, smiling at the crib with the poisoned spoon in hand. Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. What are you doing? Marcus asked. Ending this, Seraphina whispered, her voice barely audible. She dialed with trembling fingers, pressing the phone to her ear. Police, she said, her voice breaking. I need to report an attempted murder. The baby stirred in her arms, his tiny cry echoing through the room. Seraphina kissed his forehead, tears falling freely. You'll be safe, she promised. I swear it. But as the call connected, a chilling thought clawed at the edges of her mind. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Blue and red lights splashed across the walls of the Marcellus home. Neighbors gathered on the sidewalks, whispering, craning their necks. Seraphina stood on the porch, her baby clutched to her chest, Marcus's arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders. Ilara emerged between two officers, her hands cuffed, her chin lifted in defiance. Even now, she walked with regal grace, as though this were a performance staged for her audience. Mother, Seraphina whispered, her voice cracking. Why? Ilara didn't answer. She didn't look at Marcus, nor at the baby. Only at Seraphina, her eyes sharp as glass, her face unreadable. As they pushed her into the police car, Ilara leaned forward, her lips moving soundlessly. Seraphina's stomach dropped as she deciphered the words. Your mother. The door slammed shut, cutting off any chance for more. Seraphina's knees buckled. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground, his voice low and urgent. Don't let her get in your head, Sarah. She's trying to twist you. But deep inside, Seraphina knew. Those words weren't just meant to wound. They carried a truth, a secret buried beneath decades of lies. The prison visitation room smelled of disinfectant and despair. Seraphina sat across from Ilara, the thick glass between them. The phone in her hand felt like ice. Ilara picked up her receiver slowly, her smile sharp. My dear. Finally brave enough to face me. Seraphina's hands shook. Tell me what you meant. That night. Your mother. Ilara tilted her head, savoring the moment. Ah. You've carried her blood all along, yet you never knew. Whose blood? Seraphina's voice broke. Ilara's eyes glittered. Mine. No. You are not my daughter, Seraphina. You belong to my twin. My sister. The one who betrayed me and stole Orion from me. Seraphina's breath left her in a sharp gasp. That's not true. Oh, but it is, Ilara purred. I took you in out of duty, not love. Every time I looked at you, I saw her face. Her victory. You were a weapon in my war. She reached into her prison folder, sliding an old, blurred photograph against the glass. It showed two women, identical, smiling. One of them stood arm in arm with a young Orion. Seraphina's heart shattered. Ilara's voice dripped with venom. You were never meant to be, Seraphina. You were her mistake. And my revenge. Tears blurred Seraphina's vision. You're lying, she whispered, gripping the phone tighter. Ilara leaned closer to the glass, her expression calm, almost serene. I could have left you at an orphanage. I could have let you rot in the shadows. But no, I kept you under my roof, where you could suffer. Every rejection, every stolen suitor, every cruel word, carefully placed reminders that you were not wanted. Why? Seraphina's voice cracked. Why punish me for a war I never chose? Because she deserved to feel loss, Ilara spat. She took Orion from me, bore you in defiance. I swore I would destroy her happiness. And when she died, I turned to you. The perfect vessel for my vengeance. Seraphina's stomach twisted. So all those years, every look, every wound, every single one, Ilara said coldly. Your joy was my poison. Your pain, my elixir. Even your child. I meant to end him, so you could finally taste the despair that consumed me. Seraphina pressed her forehead against the glass, sobbing. Ilara smiled, her final words a dagger. You were never meant to be. You were only meant to suffer. The world blurred as Seraphina left the prison. The sky seemed too wide, the ground unsteady beneath her. She wandered until Marcus found her sitting on a bench near the courthouse, her arms wrapped around herself. "Sarah," he whispered, kneeling before her. Her eyes were hollow. "Everything I knew was a lie. My life, my identity, it's all ashes. I was never her daughter. I was a pawn. A curse." Marcus cupped her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. "No. You are not her curse. You are not her weapon. You are you. Seraphina. A doctor. A wife. A mother. My love." Her tears fell freely, dripping onto his hands. "But who am I, Marcus? If I was never meant to be?" "You are exactly who you chose to be," he said fiercely. "Not what she made you. Not what she called you. You are stronger than her hatred, brighter than her darkness." She clutched their son when they returned home, holding him close as though anchoring herself to reality. His tiny hand grasped her finger, his innocent eyes looking up at her without judgment. For the first time since the prison meeting, Seraphina felt a flicker of clarity. "I am not her weapon. I am his mother. My son's hope. My father's legacy." The truth was devastating, but it would not define her. Months passed. Ilara's trial ended in a life sentence. She remained in prison, her beauty fading, her vengeance consuming her from the inside out. Lysandra and Talia tried to reach out, their voices tinged with regret. But Seraphina's heart could no longer bend. She saw them not as enemies, but as pawns in Ilara's twisted game, and she wanted no part of it anymore. One evening, Seraphina stood at the edge of the ocean with Marcus and their son. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in gold and rose. The waves whispered against the shore, steady, eternal. Seraphina closed her eyes, letting the wind whip through her hair. She remembered Ilara's words, "You were never meant to be." Then she opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "No," she whispered. "I was meant to be. I chose to be." Marcus slipped his arm around her shoulders, their son squealing with laughter as the tide lapped at their feet. Seraphina smiled, tears of release shimmering in her eyes. For the first time, she felt free, not from Ilara, but from the chains of her own doubt. She had survived the shadows, the lies, the vengeance. She had reclaimed her story. She was no longer the daughter who was never meant to be. She was the woman who chose her fate. And as the sun rose on the horizon of her new life, Seraphina stepped forward, into hope, into healing, into freedom. The end.